The grand crystal palace of the Dragon Emperor rose above the clouds, shining under the twin suns. Its towers were carved from glowing stone, its halls wide enough for dragons to spread their wings and take flight indoors. To the outside world, the palace looked like the strongest fortress in the galaxy, a place where the royal blood of dragons lived in glory and power. But inside, behind locked doors, there was a secret. The Dragon Emperor's only son, the young prince, had been born with broken wings and weak legs. From the day he opened his golden eyes, the healers whispered the truth. He would never fly. He would never walk as a warrior. His destiny, they said, was only to sit in silence, a shadow in the court of dragons. The emperor loved his son with a father's heart, but he also carried the pride of a ruler. Dragons were known as the conquerors of stars, the lords of fire and sky. To have a son who could not fly, could not even walk, was a wound to his honor. And so, the boy was hidden away in a crystal chamber high in the palace. Few were allowed to see him. Those who did looked with pity. Some even mocked him when the emperor was not listening. The prince grew in silence. He watched other young dragons fly through the skies, their wings cutting across the sun. He heard their laughter, their roars, their battles in the training grounds. He sat by his window, gripping the cold stone with his thin claws, wondering why he had been cursed. The servants whispered behind his back. "Poor thing," said one. "Not poor," said another. "Useless. A prince who cannot fly is no prince at all." The boy heard their words, though he pretended not to. His heart hardened with every whisper, every laugh. The nobles who visited the emperor's court ignored him. To them, he was a broken heir who would never sit on the throne. Some even wished he would disappear, so a stronger cousin could take his place. The warriors looked at him with disappointment, shaking their heads. He was forgotten, invisible in his own home. But the emperor never stopped loving him. He would sit by the boy's bed at night, telling him stories of the stars, of the battles he had won, of the glory of the dragon race. The boy listened, but deep inside he felt only pain. He knew he would never live those stories. Years passed, and his chamber became a prison of silence. The boy grew older, but his legs remained weak, his wings broken. Hope faded, and he accepted his fate. Until the day she arrived. She was human. Fragile, small, soft compared to the scaled and armored bodies of dragons. Her name was Elara, and she had come from a distant human colony that served the Empire. She was assigned as a maid to the prince, though the other servants laughed at the choice. A human to care for him? They mocked. What can such a weak creature do for a broken prince? The prince did not expect anything from her either. He had seen countless servants before, cold, pitiful, or cruel. But Elara was different. From the first moment she entered his chamber, she did not look at him with pity. She did not look at him with disgust. She looked at him as if he was more than a broken child. Her eyes were calm, steady. Her movements gentle. She bowed respectfully, but when she raised her head, her gaze met his golden eyes without fear. The boy frowned. "Do you not know who I am?" he asked softly. "You are the prince," she said. "And do you know what they call me?" His voice was sharp, filled with bitterness. "Yes," she answered simply. "They call you broken." He turned away, anger rising in his chest. But before he could speak, she stepped closer. Her voice was soft but firm. "They are wrong." The boy blinked. For years, no one had ever said such words. Elara placed a hand gently on the edge of his bed. "I will not see you as broken. I will see you as someone who has not yet stood." The boy laughed bitterly. "I cannot stand. I cannot walk. My wings are useless. Even the Emperor's healers failed. Do you think a weak human can do what they could not?" Elara leaned closer, her eyes glowing with quiet fire. "Yes. Because I will not treat you as hopeless. I will not give up. One day you will walk. And maybe even more." The boy's chest tightened. He wanted to reject her words, to push her away as he had pushed away all others. But something in her tone, something in her eyes, made his heart stir. For the first time in his life, someone was not looking at him with pity. Someone was looking at him with belief. The silence stretched between them. Outside, the wind howled through the towers of the Crystal Palace. The boy's golden eyes locked onto hers. And in that moment, a spark lit in his heart. Elara smiled faintly and whispered words that struck like thunder. "I will make you stand." The next morning, the Crystal Palace stirred with its usual life. Dragons of gold and silver wings marched through the halls, servants carried trays of glowing fruits, and guards sharpened their spears made of starlight metal. Yet inside the prince's chamber, a quiet tension filled the air. The boy sat in his chair near the tall window, staring at the sky. He had spent years like this, watching the other dragon children fly above the palace, their wings cutting through clouds like blades. His broken wings twitched weakly at his back, reminders of what he would never have. Elara entered the chamber carrying a tray of warm bread and fruit. Her steps were soft, her presence light, but her eyes were steady as ever. She placed the tray on the table beside him and bowed. "You are here again," the boy said without turning his head. His voice was cold. "Most servants run from me after a day." "I do not run," Elara replied calmly. "I stay." The boy looked at her for a long moment, then turned back to the window. "You are human. You do not understand. Dragons are born to fly. I cannot. I am nothing." Elara moved closer and placed the bread before him. "Then I will help you become something. You said you cannot walk? But I believe you can." The boy laughed bitterly. "Believe? Do you think belief can heal bones? Do you think hope can fix wings?" "Yes," Elara said softly but firmly. "Because belief is the first step. Without it, no other step can come." Her words struck him, but he shook his head. "You are foolish." "Maybe," she said, smiling faintly. "But I would rather be foolish and try than be wise and give up." The boy fell silent. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Every servant before had obeyed him, pitied him, or ignored him. But this human maid was different. She looked at him as if he was not a broken prince but a challenge she would not surrender. That night, Elara began her quiet work. She brought a small bowl of warm water and a cloth. She knelt at his feet, gently lifting his weak legs. He tried to pull away. "Do not touch me," he muttered. But Elara shook her head. "If you want to walk, we must begin here. Small steps. Small strength. I will help you." Her hands were gentle yet firm as she cleaned and massaged his legs, moving the joints, pressing the muscles that had been still for years. Pain shot through him, and he hissed, his claws scraping the chair. "Stop!" he shouted. But she did not stop. "Pain means life," she said softly. "It means your body still remembers what it can be." He stared at her, stunned. For years, the healers had treated him like fragile glass, afraid to hurt him. But this human, weak compared to dragons, pressed forward without fear. Day after day, Elara returned. She stretched his arms, lifted his legs, pressed his wings gently even when he cried out. She did not flinch. She did not pity. She only whispered, "Again. Try again." At first, he hated her for it. He cursed, shouted, demanded she leave. But every time, she came back, her steady eyes never changing. One evening, after hours of painful practice, he collapsed onto his bed. His body ached, sweat dripping down his scaled brow. "Why do you do this?" he demanded. Elara placed the cloth back into the water bowl and looked at him. "Because you are a prince. And because you deserve to stand." Her words shook him. No one, not the emperor, not the healers, not the nobles, had ever said he deserved anything more than pity. The boy looked away, his golden eyes wet with anger he could not name. "If I fail? If I fall again and again? Then I will lift you again and again," she said. "Until one day you will not fall." For the first time in his life, the prince felt a spark of something he had long forgotten: hope. The next day, he allowed her to guide him from the chair to the bed. His legs shook like brittle branches in the wind, but with her support, he stood for a single heartbeat before collapsing into her arms. His chest heaved, and his eyes widened. For the first time in his life, he had felt the ground under his feet. Elara smiled as she held him steady. See? The first step has already begun. The boy stared at her in disbelief. It was only 1 second. It was only 1 step. But to him, it felt like the crack of dawn breaking after endless night. That night, as he lay in bed, his body aching, he whispered to himself words he had never dared to say before. Maybe I am not broken. Outside the chamber, servants whispered their usual cruel words. The prince will never walk. The human is wasting her time. But inside, in the quiet of his heart, something had already changed. For the first time, he wanted to try again. And Elara, the fragile human maid, knew this was only the beginning. The night sky above the crystal palace was alive with storms. Dark clouds swirled, lightning flashed across the heavens, and thunder rolled through the towers. The palace walls glowed faintly with protective runes, but inside the prince's chamber, no magic could shield his heart. The boy sat by the tall window, staring out at the storm. The other dragon children had flown that day, soaring high above the palace grounds. Their wings shone in the sunlight, their laughter echoing like music. He had watched them from afar, silent and still, his broken wings twitching weakly as jealousy burned in his chest. Now, the storm matched the storm inside him. His claws gripped the cold stone of the window frame. His golden eyes narrowed. He could not stop the voices in his mind. They will always laugh at you. You will never rise. You are nothing but the broken prince. The words of the servants and nobles had carved deep scars in his soul. But Elara's voice also echoed within him. You will stand. One day you will walk. You are not broken. He clenched his fists. Something inside him stirred, a fire long buried under shame. He could not sleep. He could not sit still. Tonight he wanted to try. Slowly, with trembling arms, he pushed himself out of his chair. His legs wobbled, weak as thin branches in the wind. He grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. His chest heaved with the effort. Sweat formed on his scaled brow. The storm outside roared louder, as if daring him. He took 1 step. His right foot dragged forward, shaky and uneven, but it touched the ground. The sound of it echoed in the silent chamber like thunder. His breath caught. His golden eyes widened. 1 step, he whispered to himself. Pain burned through his legs, but he pushed forward again. His body collapsed halfway, falling to his knees. He gasped, claws digging into the floor. His wings drooped behind him. For a moment, despair returned. Then he heard the door open. Elara? His voice was sharp with surprise. She stood in the doorway, holding a small lantern. Her eyes widened when she saw him struggling on the floor. She rushed forward, but he raised a claw, stopping her. Do not touch me, he said with determination. She froze, watching. He gritted his teeth and pressed his claws against the table. His arms shook, his wings twitched, but he forced himself upward. His legs screamed with pain. His chest burned. Yet he stood again, taller than before. Elara's heart pounded in her chest as she watched. She wanted to help, but something in his eyes told her not to. This was not her battle. This was his. The boy looked at her, his golden eyes blazing with defiance. You said I could stand? Watch me. He let go of the table. His legs trembled violently, but he stayed up for a heartbeat longer than before. Then, with all his strength, he dragged his left foot forward. It was clumsy, heavy, but it was real. A second step. He collapsed again, this time into Elara's arms. She caught him gently, lowering him onto the chair. His whole body shook, his breath coming in ragged gasps. But his face was different. His lips curled into something strange, something he had not felt in years. A smile. Elara knelt in front of him, tears shining in her eyes. You did it, she whispered. You took 2 steps. The boy laughed softly, though it was mixed with pain. They will never believe it. But I felt it. I walked. Lightning flashed behind him, bathing the room in silver light. For the first time, the storm outside did not scare him. It sang with his heartbeat. Elara placed her hand over his. This is only the beginning. Tomorrow, we will try again. And the day after. Until one day, you do not take 2 steps, you take 10. Then 20. Then you will walk wherever you wish. The boy's smile grew faint but steady. He nodded. I will defy them all. Every servant who mocked me. Every noble who pitied me. I will stand before them. And I will walk. Elara's eyes shone with pride. And when that day comes, they will bow not to a broken prince, but to the true heir of dragons. The storm raged outside, lightning and thunder shaking the skies. But inside that chamber, hope burned brighter than fire. The boy who had once believed he would never stand had taken his first steps of defiance. And the world would never be the same again. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the crystal palace. Its towers glittered like blades of glass, reflecting the fire of the twin suns. The palace looked peaceful, majestic, and unshaken. But inside its halls, whispers began to move like shadows. News had spread. The broken prince stood. A servant murmured in the kitchens. He even took steps. Another added, wide-eyed. Impossible, said a guard. That boy has been weak since birth. Not anymore, the whispers replied. Like sparks caught in dry grass, the rumors spread quickly. By the time the day ended, nobles were already discussing it in the high council chambers. Some laughed in disbelief, others frowned in worry. If the boy rises, one noble whispered to another, then he may yet claim the throne. And if he claims the throne, the other replied darkly, what will become of us? The Dragon Emperor himself remained silent. He had heard the whispers but had not seen the steps with his own eyes. He waited. He wondered. And in his heart, hope stirred alongside fear. Inside the prince's chamber, Elara continued her quiet work. She brought bowls of water, herbs from the garden, and soft cloth to strengthen the prince's body. Every day, she stretched his legs, moved his wings, and pressed his muscles until he cried out in pain. Every day, she whispered encouragement. The boy hated the pain, but he no longer hated her. He endured it, his golden eyes fierce, his heart alive with determination. At night, when the palace slept, he practiced on his own. He dragged himself from the chair to the table, from the table to the bed. His steps were clumsy, his body heavy, but each movement was a victory. One night, he stood longer than before. Elara clapped softly, her face bright with joy. You see? You are stronger already. The boy smirked. One day, I will walk before them all. They will choke on their laughter. But outside his chamber, not everyone felt joy. In the shadowed corridors of the palace, 3 nobles gathered. Their faces were cold, their voices hushed. This cannot be allowed, one hissed. The Emperor's son must remain broken. If he rises, he will be heir. And our plans will burn. Who gave him this strength? Asked another. The human, the first answered. The maid. She poisons his mind with hope. They fell silent for a moment, then one whispered. Then the human must be removed. The next day, Elara walked through the royal garden, collecting herbs. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming crystal flowers, their petals glowing faintly under the suns. She hummed softly, her hands brushing over leaves as she gathered what the prince needed. But she felt eyes on her. She turned quickly, only to see shadows vanish between the trees. When she returned to the chamber, the boy noticed her silence. What is it? He asked. Nothing, she replied quickly, forcing a smile. Let us continue. But the boy was not blind. He saw the worry in her eyes, the stiffness in her shoulders. He said nothing, but in his heart suspicion grew. That night thunder rolled again. The prince sat on his chair, staring at the floor. His legs ached from the day's training, but his heart burned brighter than ever. Elara, he said suddenly. Do you fear them? She paused, surprised. Who? The others, he whispered. The servants. The nobles. The ones who mocked me. Elara set down the bowl in her hands. She met his golden eyes without flinching. No. I do not fear them. Then why did you look over your shoulder today? He asked sharply. Elara's lips pressed into a thin line. She hesitated, then finally sighed. Because when you change, the world changes around you. Some rejoice, some fear, and some will try to stop it. The boy's claws tightened around the armrest. For years he had been invisible. Now, because of her, because of hope, he was no longer hidden. And with that came danger. But even danger could not smother the fire rising in him. Later that night, he stood again, leaning heavily on the table. His legs shook, but he forced himself to move. Elara rushed forward, but he raised a claw to stop her. Do not help me, he said through gritted teeth. If danger comes, I must stand on my own. He dragged one foot forward, then another. His wings trembled, his breath came in gasps, but he reached the far wall before falling. He lay there, laughing breathlessly. Did you see? I walked the whole chamber. Elara knelt beside him, tears in her eyes. Yes. I saw. And one day, the whole palace will see. The boy's smile faded into a fierce glare toward the door. Let them watch. Let them whisper. I will not hide any more. Outside, the storm howled across the skies, carrying those whispers through the halls of the Crystal Palace. Some whispered of hope. Some whispered of fear. And some whispered of plots darker than night. But inside the prince's heart, a single truth roared louder than thunder. He would rise. The palace garden lay quiet under the pale glow of the twin moons. Crystal flowers shimmered faintly, their petals glowing with soft blue light. The tall silver trees swayed in the wind, whispering secrets of old. For most dragons, this garden was a place of beauty and peace. But for the prince, it became a place of trial. That night, Elara guided him there. His steps were slow, his legs shaking with every movement, but he refused her hand. He wanted to walk by himself. Each step echoed in the silence, a reminder of how far he had come. When they reached the stone platform in the center of the garden, he stopped. His golden eyes lifted toward the sky. Clouds drifted across the moons. High above, a shadow of a young dragon flew past, its wings strong and graceful. The prince's heart tightened. He wanted that freedom more than anything. Elara watched him quietly. She saw the way his wings twitched, the way his claws dug into the stone. She stepped beside him and whispered, You are ready. The boy shook his head. No. My wings are broken. Broken, she said firmly. Does not mean useless. Tonight you will try. His chest tightened. Fear battled with desire. He had dreamed of flying his whole life, dreamed of feeling the wind lift him, dreamed of leaving the ground behind. But he had also dreamed of falling, crashing, breaking even further. Elara placed her hand on his arm. Every flight begins with a fall. Trust me. The boy stared at her. In her human eyes he saw no pity, only belief. Slowly he nodded. He climbed the stone steps to the top of the platform. His legs shook with each step, his wings heavy at his back. By the time he reached the top, his body ached, but his spirit blazed. The wind picked up, swirling through the garden, carrying the scent of flowers and the distant roar of thunder. The boy spread his wings. The broken bones cracked faintly, the muscles screamed with pain, but still he forced them open. For the first time in his life, his wings stretched wide beneath the moonlight. Elara stepped back, her heart pounding. She whispered, Yes. Like that. Hold them strong. The boy closed his eyes. He felt the wind brush against his wings, pulling at the fragile membranes. His claws curled around the stone. Fear whispered in his ear, You will fall. You will break again. You will fail. But then he remembered Elara's words. I will make you stand. He bent his knees and leapt. For one heartbeat he felt it, the wind catching his wings, the weight lifting from his body. For one heartbeat, he was flying. His golden eyes widened, and his heart soared higher than the moon's. But then the wind slipped. His wings shuddered, weak and broken. The strength left him, and gravity pulled him down. He crashed onto the grass below. Pain shot through his body. His wings twisted awkwardly, and his chest burned with shame. Laughter rang out nearby. A group of dragon servants had gathered at the edge of the garden, drawn by the noise. They pointed, whispering cruelly. "Look at him! He thought he could fly. Pathetic! The broken prince falls again." The boy lay on the grass, his claws digging into the dirt. Tears filled his golden eyes, not from pain but from humiliation. His heart screamed. He wanted to roar back, but no sound left his throat. Elara rushed to his side. She knelt beside him, lifting his chin. Her voice was soft but unyielding. "Do not listen to them. Look at me." He turned his eyes to her, filled with despair. "I failed." "No," she said firmly. "You leapt. You spread your wings. You felt the sky for the first time. That is not failure, that is the first step of flight." Her words cut through the shame like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The boy's chest heaved. Slowly, his tears turned into something else. Determination. He forced himself to sit up, ignoring the laughter around him. His wings hung limp, but his eyes blazed with fire. "I will try again," he growled. The servants stopped laughing. They had expected him to hide, to cry, to surrender. But instead, they saw a spark they had never seen before. Elara smiled, pride shining on her face. "Yes. And each time, you will grow stronger. Until one day, you do not fall, you soar." The boy turned his gaze to the sky. The moons glowed above, the stars endless and bright. His body was broken, but his spirit was not. Tonight, he had touched the sky, if only for a heartbeat. Tomorrow, he would try again. And one day, he swore, the world would see him not as the broken prince, but as the dragon who rose from the ground to claim the heavens. The palace had grown restless. Rumors of the prince's first leap spread faster than wildfire. Some whispered it was only a foolish attempt. Others whispered it was the start of something greater. But one thing was certain. The boy who was once forgotten was now impossible to ignore. In the council hall, lit by burning braziers of blue fire, 3 nobles gathered in secret. Their scaled faces twisted with fear and anger. The boy stood before. One muttered. "Now he dares to leap." Another growled. "If he learns to fly," the third hissed, "then the throne will be his." For years, they had built their own power, hiding behind the prince's weakness. If he rose, their dreams would burn. "And the cause?" one asked bitterly. "A human maid. A weak creature who should not even walk in this palace. She fills him with hope. She poisons him with belief." The others nodded grimly. "Then the answer is simple," one said. "Remove the maid." That evening, Elara carried a tray of food to the prince's chamber. The crystal hallways were dim, shadows stretching across the floor. She walked quickly, unaware of the eyes watching her from the dark. In the kitchen earlier, a servant had offered her sweet fruit juice, saying it would give her strength after long hours. She had accepted with a smile, not knowing that poison slept within the cup. By the time she reached the prince, her steps faltered. Her breath came short, her vision blurred. The tray slipped from her hands, crashing to the floor. "Elara!" the boy shouted, leaping forward from his chair. His legs trembled, but he pushed himself harder than ever before. He stumbled, fell to his knees, but crawled across the floor with claws scraping stone. She collapsed beside the bed, gasping for air. Her face turned pale, her body shaking. "No!" the prince growled, his golden eyes burning with rage. He dragged himself to her, lifting her into his trembling arms. For the first time, he carried someone with his own strength. His legs screamed in pain, but he forced them to move. Step by step, he carried her toward the door. The guards at the entrance stared in shock. The broken prince, who had never walked more than a few steps, now staggered forward with fire in his eyes and a human maid in his arms. "Call the healers!" he roared. The guards obeyed instantly. For the first time, his voice carried the weight of command. The Emperor himself arrived at the chamber of healing, his silver crown gleaming under the firelight. His eyes widened when he saw his son, standing, trembling, but standing, beside the bed where Elara lay. The healers worked quickly, pouring glowing liquid into her mouth, chanting old spells that pulled the poison from her veins. Slowly, her breath steadied. Her color returned. The prince held her hand the entire time, refusing to let go. His claws shook not from weakness but from fear of losing her. When at last the healer nodded and said, "She will live," the boy closed his eyes in relief. The Emperor looked at his son with shock and wonder. "You walked. You carried her." The boy turned to him, fire blazing in his golden eyes. "Yes. And I will never stop. Because she believed in me when no one else did. Without her, I would still be nothing. She is mine to protect." The Emperor fell silent. For the first time, he saw not a broken child but the fire of a true heir. But outside the healing chamber, the nobles hissed in frustration. Their poison had failed. Worse, their plan had awakened something even more dangerous, the prince's wrath. "We must be careful," one whispered. "He is stronger than we thought." "Stronger," another spat. "Because of her. As long as she lives, he will grow." They retreated into shadows, their plots darkening. That night, as Elara slept peacefully under the healer's care, the boy sat beside her bed. His legs were wrapped in bandages, his wings sore, but he did not care. He watched her breathing, his claws curled into fists. "Because of you," he whispered, "I have walked. Because of you, I have carried. They tried to break you, but they only woke me." The storm outside howled through the night, but his eyes burned brighter than lightning. He leaned close and whispered a vow to her as she slept. "They will never harm you again. If I must crawl, I will crawl. If I must bleed, I will bleed. But I will rise, Elara. I will rise for you." The palace was silent at dawn. A soft, golden light spread across the crystal towers, painting them in fire. Birds circled in the sky, their wings glowing under the rising suns. Inside the highest tower, the dragon prince stood at the edge of the balcony, his broken wings stretched wide. Elara stood behind him, still weak from her brush with death, but her eyes steady and full of pride. "You are ready," she whispered. The boy's heart pounded. His legs trembled, not from weakness but from the weight of the moment. For years he had been called broken. For years he had been hidden away. But now, the palace gathered below. Nobles, guards, servants, even the Emperor himself, all waiting to see if the impossible would happen. The boy felt their eyes on him. He heard their whispers. "He cannot do it. He will fall again. He is still the broken prince." But he also heard Elara's voice, soft yet unshakable. "You are not broken. You are strong. You are meant for the sky." He closed his eyes. He thought of every step, every fall, every moment of pain. He thought of the night he carried Elara, his legs screaming but his heart refusing to stop. And then he thought of the sky, endless, beautiful, waiting for him. He opened his eyes. His golden gaze blazed like fire. The Emperor raised his hand, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Today, my son will show us who he truly is." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even the nobles who plotted in shadows could not hide their unease. If the prince flew, their power would crumble. The boy stepped forward. The stone beneath his claws felt cold, but the wind on his face felt alive. His wings spread wider, broken yet fierce. Elara's voice reached him once more. "Leap, my prince. The sky is waiting." He leapt. For a heartbeat, silence fell. The air rushed past him, the ground far below. His wings caught the wind, trembling, shuddering, almost breaking. The crowd gasped. For a moment, it seemed he would fall again. But then, something changed. The fire inside him burst forth. His wings snapped open with all the strength he had built, all the hope Elara had given him. The wind caught him fully, lifting his body higher and higher. His golden eyes widened in shock, then burned with joy. He was flying. The courtyard erupted in cries. Some shouted in disbelief, others roared in triumph. Even the Emperor's stern face broke into a smile, pride shining in his eyes. The prince soared across the sky, his wings beating with fierce determination. He circled the palace towers, the wind rushing through his scales. For the first time, he was free. On the balcony below, Elara pressed a hand to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered. "You truly did it." The boy dived low, swooping past the nobles who had once mocked him. Their faces turned pale as his golden eyes met theirs. He roared, a sound filled with power and defiance, shaking the very air. No one laughed now. He rose higher, above the palace, above the clouds, until the suns painted his wings in gold and crimson. The broken prince no longer existed. In his place was a dragon who had defied fate itself. When he landed on the tower again, his legs wobbled, but he stood tall. The courtyard fell silent. The Emperor stepped forward, his voice thundering like a storm. "My son has risen. He is heir to the throne. And it was not healers or nobles who gave him this strength, it was a human maid." Gasps spread through the crowd. The Emperor continued, his eyes fierce. "Let it be known, the maid Elara is under my protection. She gave the prince the sky. For that, she will be honored among dragons." Elara bowed her head, tears in her eyes. The boy turned to her, his smile filled with gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken but eternal. "You kept your promise," he said softly. "You made me stand." She shook her head, smiling through her tears. "No, my prince. You made yourself stand. I only reminded you that you could." The crowd roared with cheers. Servants, guards, even warriors who once doubted him now bowed deeply. The nobles who had plotted in shadows lowered their eyes, their power shattered by the sight of the impossible. The boy spread his wings once more, lifting them high for all to see. His voice echoed through the palace. "I am no longer broken. I am the Prince of Dragons. And the sky belongs to me." High above, the suns burned brighter, casting their light over the palace. The storm of whispers, doubts, and schemes had ended. What remained was a single truth carved into the hearts of all who witnessed it. The Dragon Prince had risen. And beside him stood the human maid who had changed everything. The sky was no longer a dream. It was his destiny.